Good morning, Neil.
Hi, Hugh. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So on the CPI print, it seemed to be largely in line, but I think you see some issues ahead. What gives?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. I think the most important aspect of the CPI data, frankly, is that core goods disinflation is largely over. When you look at core goods CPI, it rose for the first time since March. And what that basically tells you is that, we've sort of squeezed a lot of the juice out of better supply chain issues. And this is true even when you take used cars out of the equation. So I think that's important. This had been an area of disinflation that a lot of people are counting on. I think that's basically over. The second thing is food prices rose, but they only rose a little bit. And that's likely to accelerate between now, at least through the end of the year, because we're seeing diesel prices go up. And we know that how does food get to the grocery store? Well, it's taken there by a truck, and that truck usually runs on diesel. So I think it's highly likely that food prices accelerate. That's going to have implications for household inflation expectations, right? Because an individual's perception of inflation is basically driven by the things that they spend their money on frequently, and that's namely food and energy. We did see a lot of disinflation with respect to shelter. In our daily today, we talk a little bit about the differences between OER and rent or primary residence. It's important to know that we will continue to see some disinflation in housing rentals, rental inflation. But again, I mean, with home prices starting to pick back up, it's really hard to see how long that lasts. I mean, it's hard to see it lasting beyond, let's say, the first quarter of next year. And it's important to finally, last point is that there is a wedge between CPI and PCE, right? There's sort of, one of the things that happens in economics is you have different measures that kind of look at the same concept. So with respect to inflation, you have CPI and PCE. The CPI data is probably going to exaggerate the upward momentum in inflation for a variety of reasons. But that's going to create kind of communication challenges, I think, for the Fed. So as an example, airfares rose very sharply in the CPI data today. That's probably not going to happen in PCE. But it's an issue about how the Fed communicates that, right? I mean, because if you're in a situation where CPI inflation which is a measure that a lot of people are very aware of, if that's going up, and PCE is somewhat more benign, it's going to be interesting to see how the Fed navigates that. I mean, it may just be that that's just the reason for them to kind of stay pat for longer, but I think it's going to be something that's going to be interesting for the markets to wrestle with as we go forward.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, Neil, and we will definitely keep an eye on things. Appreciate it.